You got a really popular comic book, then many years later, you eventually get a movie adaptation. That's how it used to be. Until the success of Marvel Studios with mainstream audiences made it a priority over the comics. Nowadays, Marvel comics are slowly but surely resembling the movies more, and with publishers like Image, you got comics that are made just to be pitched into movies or shows. So, how did we get to this point? While certain individuals on the social media cesspool known as Twitter would have you believe that the sole reason why Spider-Man fans dislike the current state of Amazing Spider-Man is just because Peter Parker and Mary Jane aren't romantically together, the truth of the matter is that there's more to it than a simple straw man. Misogynistic writing of female characters, inconsistent editing, events that barely have anything to do with Spider-Man, and story arcs that literally repeat concepts less than a year old. Wanting a pre-One More Day status quo akin to the J. Michael Straczynski run of Amazing Spider-Man is more or less a stepping stone to making the title enjoyable again. Think of it as a foundation rather than a solution, considering that Ultimate Spider-Man understood that. Going back to the death and resurrection of Kamala Khan, during an interview with writer Cody Ziglar from those guys, it was revealed that producer Kevin Feige ordered that she'd be turned into a mutant since she's a mutant in the MCU. It was funny watching when the whole Kamala stuff was going down, Ziegler says in the interview. He, Zeb Wells, had told me months before the plan, which was, Feige was like, hey, I don't do this very often, but can you please do this to make things in line with Marvel because we have some stuff we want to do with Kamala. So he, Zeb Wells, was like, fuck. I'm the guy that drew the short straw? People are going to be very mad that I have to kill Miss Marvel. Now, could Zeb Wells and the editorial have pitched a plan to make Miss Marvel a mutant without fridging an ethnic minority in a run that already doesn't seem to respect women and wasting readers' time? Definitely, but was making her a mutant in the first place really necessary? I get that Kevin Feige doesn't want the Inhumans to contribute much to the MCU given the ABC show's reception, but there's nothing wrong with letting an adaptation have its own creative changes, just as much as letting the comics continue to be its own thing, since by doing that, you're not really adding anything to the character in the first place. Except for maybe making her a member of the X-Men or an X-Men adjacent team. Even then, how long is that gonna last? The signs were all there. I already once mentioned how back in 2022, Akira Yoshida CB Cebulski announced that Marvel Comics were starting to be made just to be adapted into the MCU. Before and after Disney acquired Fox, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch's origins in the comics flip-flopped because this was back before mutants couldn't be used in the MCU. Deadpool comics are only released when there's an upcoming new film, and the character in the comic resembles more of Ryan Reynolds' version nowadays. A movie based on Civil War? How about a Civil War II event for the comics? We're now seeing this on a larger scale with both movies and shows on Disney+. The Krakoa era was, without a doubt, the most progressive leap and change for the X-Men in a very long time. Mutant heroes and villains putting aside their differences, for the most part, to create a safe haven nation for mutants, while still trying to save the world from threats in the process. Jonathan Hickman truly made the next leap of status quo for the X-Men. And now, it's all coming to an end because of brand synergy. One person to thank for this is Tom Brevoort, one of Marvel's biggest editors, someone who isn't too big on mutants, going as far as once calling Cyclops Hitler, and allegedly a supporter of the use of AI in making comics. Like, come on man, it's a yes or no answer if you use AI. It's bad enough that DC is allowing it on a Batman comic, and it just spits in the face of every actual artist who's worked on comics and whoever's art the AI is stealing from. And if we're gonna go over on, like most Marvel editors, how out of touch he is, back in 2006, he was so invested in the status quo of comics during his time that he made a whole manifesto just for One More Day, which argued that Spider-Man is about youth rather than responsibility. Spider-Man doesn't grow up. He doesn't get a 9-to-5 job and couldn't hold it if he did get one. The idea that J. Michael Straczynski set up, with him teaching in his old school, had its merits, but they never really got fleshed out and explored enough. And making Peter a teacher definitely made him seem older. Of course, this notion would be doubled down on in a later blog. Spider-Man is no more about responsibility than Batman is about criminals being a superstitious and cowardly lot. That's the tagline to the first adventure, and a strong moral message to go out on, but it's what that story is about, not what the series is about. And in point of fact, it wasn't until the late 80s - early 90s that you began to see the phrase start to get beaten on like a drum, with story titles like The Great Responsibility and Power and Responsibility, and so forth, not coincidentally. A time after Peter had been married, and the creators were looking for some other bedrock to take the place of youth. Responsibility is certainly an element of Spider-Man, but then show me a hero for whom it's not an element. I wonder where that got us. Going back to how the X-Men is now going through a similar regression, there's something ironic about a comic series that's an allegory for civil rights having its helm taken by someone who doesn't even like mutants, and another mutant genocide potentially being thrown in the plot to revert the status quo to pre-Cocoa, especially when genocide is even more of a sensitive subject today, all for the sake of synergizing with X-Men 97 and whatever Kevin Feige has in store for the X-Men in the MCU. I'm not entirely surprised, since this is the same comic company that immediately rectified the run that tried to make Amazing Spider-Man comics better with this. My only hope with the upcoming X-Men titles is that Marvel can at least read the room, especially in a post-2020 world. Unfortunately though, it seems that similar to editors like Nick Lowe and Akira Yoshida, Tom Brevoort is someone who's still stuck in the past. There's only a select handful of Marvel titles worth reading nowadays, which are ones that are not meant to be pitched into movies and shows within a few years, because at least you know you won't be getting any disastrous creative changes just to fit into the lore of something else entirely. I can say the same for whenever DC does it, but at worst in recent memory was the Black Adamification of certain titles and his appearance in comics. It's counterproductive to try making the comics into basically ads for the movies and shows, because the majority of MCU fans and casual viewers don't even read comic books. Rather, it'd be because of the rising prices of both single issues and collected editions, the collective and speculative nature of comics. Knowing where to begin might be too much work, even though it's not that complicated. Marvel refusing to release their Epic collections in numerical order, and mainly releasing collected editions of older comics based on upcoming projects. It's the unfortunate reality. I really had a whole speech planned for this part of the video, but I do want this to come out by Free Comic Book Day. Capitalism sucks. And so do out-of-touch folks who think they know better than everyone else while not being able to read the room. In the words of Jack Kirby, comics will break your heart.